Welcome back to the Corner of Story and Game, a podcast at the intersection of game design and storycraft. Today's guest brings a completely different flavor to our conversation. Literally, he's the creator and dungeon master behind the Dungeon Cocktail Experience, an in-person, fantasy-fueled immersive adventure where cocktails, improvised D&D, and audience choices collide. What makes Jesse's work so exciting is that it's live, unscripted, and intimate. Guests aren't just watching a show, they're inside a living, breathing world that reacts to their choices. In this episode, we're going to unpack how Jesse builds those worlds, keeps audiences engaged in real time, and what makes each night's story unique. And all that while running a business and producing the entire experience from scratch. So, let's get into it. Jesse, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gerald.
I'm really excited to dig into the topic of the day today, talking about the Dungeon Cocktail Experience that you're launching and your experience with live world building and improv theater meets D&D. But before we get into it, I do like to hear your origin story. How did you fall in love with gaming? What was your career journey like up to this point? Where did this idea come from? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, the gaming question. So I discovered Dungeons and Dragons in like 1988, I think, or 1987. I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I just remember some friends were like talking about this new game. And I was always I like games. I've always liked games, board games, strategy games, any kind. And it was Redbox basic D&D. And I remember going down to Ben Franklin up in Tomahawk, Wisconsin, which is where I lived. And they had a Redbox. And so I bought one, took it home. And oddly, I'm 52 now. I can still remember opening that box and like going through the pages and going, this is so cool. And yet I don't understand what this is, right? Like, as I was reading through the original adventure for your listeners who are Redbox people, you know, there's like a warrior, then you fight a rust monster and you go through this little intro adventure. And I can still remember going, I don't get it, but it's really cool. Like, how do you play? And like many people who aren't familiar with role-playing games, it takes a bit to wrap your head around the idea that you're not like competing against somebody. There's not a way to win.
Right.
And that is my story. And I've been a gamer, particularly a role-playing gamer ever since.
Nice. And not to jump ahead of things, but where did the Dungeon Cocktail Experience idea come from? What gave birth to this?
Yeah. So back in about 2010, 2011, I started to take improv classes in Madison with a company called Monkey Business Institute. And I formed a friendship with one of the founders there. His name is Brad Knight. And it turns out he was a gamer. And I took improv classes. And after about a year, I actually joined him to be a partner in that. And we were gaming all along and taking improv, gaming, improv. And one night I just said to Brad, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we could like do an improv D&D show? And he was like, yeah, that would be amazing. He yes-anded me. And so back in 2011, I designed the show. It was very small at that time. We were going to just do a couple of shows in the basement of Glass Nickel Pizza here in Madison. And it was really just like, wouldn't it be fun? I'm a very meta person. It's like, wouldn't it be fun if we were like portraying that we're playing a game of D&D? We create our characters, and then when there's an adventure, when there's an encounter or something cool that's going to happen, we actually get up from the game table and then embody our characters and then go see this encounter play out on stage. And that's what we did. And so we ran the show, I think 2011, 2012. It was actually more popular than we thought it would be. And that was at a time when D&D wasn't all that well known even still. So we had a lot of people that were like, what is it again? But when they came and when we had a video, we still have a video up on our website where we had audience reaction that people absolutely loved it.
Cool.
And so we did that for a couple of years, and we did it all around sort of southern Wisconsin and Indiana, Illinois. And then life happened, and I had kids and grad school and these things. And then fast forward to about a year and a half ago, I discovered these cocktail experiences. And so I fused the two things together. And it was a way for us to revive what we called at that time IRPMAS, which stood for Improvised Role Playing Mashup Show. And IRPMAS and cocktail experiences came together to create the Dungeon Cocktail Experience.
Neat. Well, you've kind of painted around the edges for us, but let's just to set the stage here for people who haven't attended a show like this. What is, like, walk me through. You've given us the hints, but what is your experience? What is this thing?
Yeah. So if you're a guest, the first thing, we consider all guests to be nobility, and we're trying to create an immersive realm for people to be in, and we're mindful that it's accessible to both gamers and people who like cosplay and things like that, but also just the general public who want to see a fun improv show or maybe a cocktail experience. But for us, we're really working hard to create an immersive world. So all of our crew, we have 7 crew on opening weekend. All of them are in character. They all have stories that they've been working on. And when they interact with our guests, they're dropping little hints of their story and trying to create a fantasy tavern-like experience for them. So that's the first thing. Obviously, you get 3 cocktails. Those are themed. We have this season, we have the Potion of Strength, which is a brandy-based cocktail. We're from Wisconsin, so we had to honor the birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons. Had to honor that. Brandy's a big thing here. We have the Bard's Harmony cocktail, and then we have the Elixir of Arcane Brilliance. So you get 3 themed cocktails. And then the show itself, we start literally with maybe only a setting. So we have 1 diamond ticket that's available for each show. And if you were to purchase that diamond ticket, you get to share with us what you want the setting to be. You can name it. You can tell us anything you want. So we get that ahead of time. So let's just say it's in a forest. We're like, okay, that's what we know. And then we set off. And with the audience interaction, we have big, giant D20 dice. They roll dice. We create characters in the first act and establish who those characters are. And then we literally go on an adventure. We're sitting at a game table. We're portraying gamers playing D&D. And the idea we're going for is that the audience is in the fantasy realm that we're actually playing the game in. So they're sort of like looking at us playing a game that's in their world. That's what we're trying to create. And then each time, again, when there's encounters and stuff like that, we get up, walk up to the stage, and then act out that in a very theatrical and fun, improvised way. And there can be music, there's improvised songs. We can do limericks, we can do analogies. There's all these crazy things that happen. When we have monsters, we get the audience to ask them to come up. If we get a volunteer, they'll come up and portray a monster, and that kind of thing. And then each intermission, we have some bonus entertainment where we have some of those characters from the realm come up and give a little bit more about their stories. So that's the Dungeon Cocktail Experience in a nutshell.
Very cool. You mentioned world building. Like, you don't do like much pre-world building ahead of time?
We don't do any pre-world building. So what we literally have is a character sheet that is a very big. The first thing I'll say is it's not any specific edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of loosely D&D based. Yeah, so there'll be spells and terms that D&D fans, role-playing game fans would know. But the only world building we do to start really is if there's a diamond ticket holder. They, by the way, are the king or queen for that show, and they are nobility. They get like a special seat, and there's a number of ways that we kind of honor the king or queen of the realm for that show. But that's it. We just get from them a suggestion around what the environment is. And the idea there is, like, for some gamers, they're very passionate about their adventures and their campaigns. We wanted to give them an opportunity if they wanted to see their little world and campaign come to life in a unique, chaotic, and fun way, that they could do that. And so that's the extent of it. Really, that's it. All improvised, start to finish.
That's really, really cool. I mean, it would offer an interesting look at fluid world building on the spot. Is there, I mean, you mentioned yes, and is there other tools or structures that you need to make sure you and your team have to afford that level of flexibility?
Yeah, Gerald. So there are some, I would call them loose guardrails. For example, we know that we want to build a simple story arc. So we know that in the beginning, we have to establish relationships and the types, the interplay between the characters. It's a 90-minute show
Mm.
with two 10 to 15-minute intermissions. So really the show is about an hour long. And in 1 hour, we have to establish who those characters are, what their relationships are. There are certain storytelling techniques or things that we use. Again, like building a story arc. So in the beginning, we want to establish those things, but then build some sort of why are we here? What is the purpose of this adventure quite early? The audience gives us that in most cases. So we know, like, okay, that's what we're here for.
Hmm.
And then we try to build tension and kind of a drama, in the second act in particular, culminating typically in ideally, it's an improvised show, so anything can happen, but ideally, we kind of have a big cliffhanger moment or something crazy at the end of the second half. And then the final act is really, second act. The final act is really then resolving that and then seeing what happens with these characters. Um, there's things that we strive for that are, I would say, again, basic techniques that we use to help us. For instance, we intentionally try to create um, contrast in characters. So if audience rolls a giant D20 to give us an attribute, and we're like, "Hey, Gerald, all right, Gerald needs a strength. What's his strength?" And they roll the die, and it's an 18, and it's like, "Yay!" Everybody cheers. That's amazing. Like you have an 18 strength. Then what we'll try to do is, and sometimes we just assign it, but it's purposeful. You might have an 18 strength, but a 5 intelligence, for instance, so that we create contrast in those characters, things like that.
Cool, cool. And when it comes to game design, regardless of the platform or the format, part of a good adventure is grabbing people right at the beginning, establishing that buy-in, that making them care. Are there things you guys have to do to make sure your audience is invested from the beginning?
Yeah, and I think we're fortunate in that it's because of the structure and format of what we're doing. Since the audience is really helping us build those characters from the beginning, and I mentioned attributes, they roll for that, but they also can give us things like they give us class, they give us species or race. They could give us magic items or quirks. So they kind of help give us character attributes
Right.
across the board. And I feel like that kind of naturally creates buy-in because the audience gave those to us, right? And now they're seeing us portray the things that they already wanted to see or established. Um, it's also highly interactive. So that whole most of the first act where we're building characters, we're constantly going back and forth to the audience and engaging them, and it just kind of naturally creates high energy, and I think a connection with the audience that we really enjoy, and I think our audience does too. And then the final thing I would say is, again, with the crew, they're all in character. They're playing a fantasy character, and they're there to help create more of an immersiveness in the world and in that tavern. So I think that helps too.
That makes sense. With all that freedom and flexibility, do you worry, or do you have something in place in case things really go off the rails? Is there a border somewhere where they've gone too far and you have to pull them back in?
Yeah. I mean, with any improv comedy, it's always possible that things can get really crazy. Um, there's a couple thoughts I have on that question. It's a great question. One is that I think what we strive for, people will oftentimes talk about improv, and you talk to them, and if they don't really do it, they say, "Oh, I'm not really that witty, or I'm not really that funny." And the thing is that we're really not striving to be funny. We're really essentially consistently striving to be interesting, and it just kind of turns out to be funny. So, anytime you have something that's chaotic or crazy, and my role in all of this, besides the creator and host, is I'm the dungeon master. So it's kind of my role to make sure that the story is interesting and progressing along. But since it's improvised, the adventurers are also back and forth playing that. But in the event something gets a little bit too crazy, you just have to think in the moment and on the spot of ways that you can make it interesting, but also kind of bring it back. And, it's totally possible that chaos will ensue in just about every adventure. But we have a really talented cast, Gerald, and like they're so experienced. I would say of the opening weekend, the three cast members who are adventurers probably have a combined 50 years of improv experience.
Ooh,
Um, and then myself since 2011, so they're 14. So very experienced cast. They're pretty good at dealing with those kinds of situations.
very cool. It sounds like quite the experience.
Yeah.
When when you're on this journey, when you're it's an entertainment show, but you also, I would assume, want to tell a story that's emotionally rewarding. You want resonance. And you mentioned using the traditional three-act structure and the story arcs. Are there other tools or things that you guys are considering to ensure that experience, the story, has that emotional resonance?
There's a couple. So really key to that is so for VIPs, we use a ticket tier structure. Anybody who's been to a gaming convention in the last 10 years would be familiar with it. So it's kind of a silver, gold, platinum tier structure. Silver is the basic general admission with cocktails. And then anything above that, they'll have an immersive experience pre-show. So this season, and in Madison in particular, but also in Milwaukee, we're doing that in a few weeks. August 21st. We have a little mini dungeon where they will actually enter into this little mini dungeon. It's a short experience and an encounter with some of our characters. And that crew is kind of telling a story inside that little mini encounter that I won't give away any secrets. You got to come to the show to see, but it plays out on stage later, so that there's a connection and a kind of a memory of that. In addition, each intermission has, at the end of the intermission leading into the next act, we have some about 5 minutes of entertainment that also kind of expands and deepens the story of each of those individual characters, that creates connection, we hope, with the audience, and kind of a care for those characters. For the adventures on stage, again, I think we try to mine it. It's difficult. It's an hour and a half, and you're creating the character on the spot. So as a performer, you want to try to embody that character, and you try to find one or two kind of lines that run through that character, right? Maybe the character is a lost character who just really has been a drifter and hasn't found a home. And we try to delve into that deeply. And, one, it's very interesting, but two, I think it helps us connect with the audience and the audience to kind of care about those characters too.
That's smart. So yeah, you're getting them to be emotionally invested because they care about the characters and the arcs. I'm curious, there's also that phenomenon when it comes to especially live improv theater where you become invested because it's a bespoke experience. It's going to happen once. Nobody else is ever going to be part of this story, so it becomes part of your story. Is that
Right.
also part of the whole? Like, have you taken that into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking about more of the business structure of it and that kind of thing, I think that is a unique aspect of all improv. But for us, like you could, not that anybody would do this, but you could literally come to all 6 shows on opening weekend, and every adventure would be different with different characters. The tavern would be similar because those characters are not improvised. Those are characters they're working on. But the rest of it is entirely improvised. So it just, I didn't really have to do anything special about that part of it. It's just the nature of improv comedy, obviously. Yeah.
Very cool. You mentioned the tavern itself. I'm curious, this is completely off topic, but has the tavern does it have the opportunity to become a character? Have you put a lot into like set design and get all stage nerdy on you here for a second, but is like a high level of prop design and all of that going on as well?
Yeah. That's pretty minimalistic, only because it's a pop-up experience.
Right.
We'll be in Madison, for 3 days, and then 2 weeks later we'll be over in Milwaukee, and then next year, actually later this year, we want to expand to the upper Midwest, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa. So, part of it is when you're designing something like that and people are on the road, you have to design it in a way that's it adds enough uh to it to make it feel more immersive and fantasy driven, but also has to be mobile so that they can take it from one
Right.
place to the other on a relatively tight budget. So the set design pieces are relatively minimal. One of the things we do in terms of costumes and props is so really, again, if you're watching this, if you're at the experience, you will see essentially two characters for every one of our players. One of them is a gamer playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons in your world, and then the other one is the character that they. And when they make that transition, when they create their characters, after the character creation is done, we have a number of costume pieces that are all relatively simple to put on and off, right? A hat, for example, or maybe a cloak that you can slip over. And so when they're at the game table, they're dressed just like you and I are today, like modern gamers. But when they become their characters, they quick grab that, maybe a hat and a cloak, and they put that on. And then that helps a little bit kind of represent that character. So the things like that we do that are kind of mobile, but also help us establish the world.
Very, very cool. I love that. Okay, well,
Yeah.
back on track for a second here.
Yeah.
When we're talking about getting your audience invested in the experience that you're creating, are there things that you're going to be looking for so you know whether or not they're invested? Are there green flags, red flags?
Yeah, I mean, I think energy matters. And so I think for most theater people, you can sort of just, it's a little bit of an odd, weird phenomena, I guess. When I was first getting into theater stuff, I was more of an athlete in my earlier days, not as much in theater. And this like energy vibe feel is it's sort of not tangible, but at the same time, if you're in theater, you know what I'm talking about. Um, so energy matters, and you can see as part of our job too is to heighten the energy in the crowd. And when the audience has high energy and they're having fun, obviously it's an improv comedy show at its core. So when people are laughing and smiling and having a good time, you can tell on stage. That's obviously a really good sign. um, by contrast, if people are kind of quiet, sitting on their hands, in some shows that happens, it just happens to be that audience. Then you have to work hard to try to build that energy and heighten the energy a little bit. But generally speaking, it tends to work pretty well because again, I would go back to in the beginning, we're engaging and interacting with them so much in the early stages of that show, and then sprinkled in throughout the rest of the show that it seems to have an effect of keeping people engaged and interested.
Smart. Stay engaged with your audience. There's the thing to learn there. Pay attention. Yep.
Yeah.
Like it. I'm curious, in bigger picture, has designing this sort of experience, how has it impacted the way you view storytelling in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say that storytelling in general, we know in the beginning, and now kind of getting into sort of like the mechanics of that design, if you will, in the story.
Mm-hmm.
We know we have 90 minutes. We know we're going to have intermissions, and we kind of know all that. So we know in the first act, we have to get characters developed and introduced and maybe out on the adventure starting. So we know in act one, that's what we need to do. Right. So we're mindful of time, and you're doing things like that. And then we have our intermission. We have some entertainment that's designed to help bring in threads of the story of the world, of the realm through other characters' eyes. That's by design. So that we're helping to deepen the immersion, right? Immersive. And then, of course, in Act Two, again, we know that we have to establish pretty quickly because we have a short time. Why does this matter? Who cares that they're on this adventure? Like, what's the big thing? And one of the tools that we use for this type of a story is we call Today's the Day, right? So it's basically like, today's the day that what, right? Today's the day that I'm going to reveal that, this is my last adventure and I've been doing this my whole life, but I'm done. Or today's the day like that I'm going to find the secret to my parents' death, right? Like, so those tend to really have an impact of like, ooh, and if you're in the audience, you're like, I want to see that, right? So there's little things like that or that are within the story design, that kind of help us heighten the interest and heighten the tension and drama within it. And then of course, it's a basic story arc. So, you're kind of who, what, and where, and then
Yeah.
why does this matter? And then some kind of conflict and then resolving that in the third act.
I like your today is the day structure. I'm going to steal that one. I like
Yeah.
that. That's clever.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start bringing the core topic to a close. I have some fun questions for after we're done with the core topic, but I guess something I like to look for is what is the things you've learned that could be applied to other people working in other industries that are game or story related. So I guess kind of to bring it together and to put a pin into this whole thing, um, you're a business guy. Like that keeps coming up. You're aware of budget and scope and time restraints and logistics and all of these important aspects that impact the creative endeavor. So from that point of view, the big picture, what are some things you've learned, or even just one really important thing you've learned about DIY design and producing a business that has a creative outlet attached to it or integrated into it? What is something you've learned that you can share with developers or indie studios or independent creators that's important to the process?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I would say, if you have an idea, it's really important to stick with that kind of core idea, but also be open. So, as an improviser, yes and is the golden rule, right? And so, yes and things, but don't lose sight of what your core goal is or what your core focus is. And at least for me, every idea is a valid idea, and you're just kind of litmus testing that into, like in this case, we really wanted the experience to be like anybody who's played a role-playing game of any kind, D&D or otherwise. It's like, especially if you've been in a campaign. My longest campaign was about an 8-year campaign. You really get invested in those characters, right? Like you basically know those characters like they're your friends, close friends in a way. And so we want to bring that to life. And so just being mindful, like that is something that we wanted to do here and create a very immersive experience. So when you have ideas, it's pretty easy to kind of go down rabbit holes or go in a direction that later you're like, wait a minute, how did we get here? And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like that's a really important part of the creative process. But as you're designing, you really have to keep in mind that the core goal and like, does this serve what we're trying to create? And if it doesn't, maybe put it in a parking lot. I wouldn't say get rid of it, but put it in a parking lot and see maybe down the road if it fits. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I say the core message there is be open to exploring different avenues, but also be willing to bring it back to sort of your North Star at some point.
That's golden. That's brilliant. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, that's the core topic. I have a philosophical question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. So if you've listened to an episode, you've heard it, and it's your turn to answer for me. My question is, in my opinion, there's a magical space at the intersection of obviously story and game, but also improv theater, filmmaking, music, all of these wonderful things where we all just get along. There's a shared fellowship, a shared language, instant connections. If you agree with my little theory, not everybody does, but if you do, what is the magical thread that holds all that together?
Well, first, I do agree with your philosophy, Joe. um, I think what it really is, if I just put it in one word, is imagination. It's from the time you're a kid and you're, out. I mean, when I was a kid, fourth grade, fifth grade, I'd dress back then. Ninjas were a big thing, right? And so we'd dress up like ninjas. And I was a hockey player, so we'd cut off a hockey stick and use tape and create like katanas and stuff like that. And then we'd literally go out into the night, my friends and I, dressed up like ninjas in Tomahawk, Wisconsin, and we'd run around and act like we're ninjas. And it's just imagination. I mean, to me, it's as old as time. is whatever you can think up or come up with, is there a way to bring that to life? And I just think, to me, it's that creativity, that imagination thread that runs through all of us.
Love it. Love it. Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us almost to the end. I do like to open a little space here at the end for signal bursting. Obviously, I want to hear what you're working on. We've talked about it a lot, but hey, hit me with the pitch line of the experience, and then also where can we follow you online as well?
Yeah. So you can follow us at dungeoncocktailexperience.com website. We have a Facebook page, Instagram. So you can go to any of those channels, but I would recommend the website.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously we're getting ready as of the time of this recording. We're 1 week away from our opening night, and we've been working on this for 8 months. So we're really excited to bring it along. But simultaneously, we're also learning about what audiences want and what people want to see in these cocktail experiences, and then which geographies. So again, we're going to do 3 weekends right now in 2025, with a 4th on the horizon. Next year, I want to expand it to probably 18 weekends would be an ideal number, and travel around. So we've had a lot of interest from a lot of different people. And so those are the big things that, right now it's just, there is so much to do to get ready. And particularly when you're kind of a solopreneur. I have a lot of help, and there's a lot of people that are chipping in, but I am the sole owner and creator. And so there's so much stuff to do that lately, as in maybe the last 6-8 weeks, most of my time has really just been, what do we all need to do to get ready for this experience? But also keeping in mind, how do we expand it and bring it to more people down the road?
Well, we will help spread the word. Everybody, check out the links will be in the show notes. Go check this thing out. And if you're in the area, go get tickets.
That would be awesome. August 7th through the 9th in Madison, and August 21st through the 23rd in Cudahy, which is a suburb of Milwaukee.
There you go. Cool. All right, my friend, that brings us to the end. I like to give the guest the final word as I push you out the door of my imaginary tavern here into the Canadian cold, although it's not cold today. But I'd love to give you the final word. Do you have any parting words of wisdom? It can be craft, it can be life in general, it can be a recipe. I've added that recently. Whatever it is you want, hit me with it.
Well, yeah, the first thing I want to say is thank you so much for having me on, Gerald. It's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fun for me, and that's super important, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else than that. You can edit that. So,
oh, that's going to be your parting word right there. You can edit that.
You can edit. That's my parting word.
And that wraps up another episode of The Corner of Story and Game. A huge thank you to Jesse for sitting down and sharing how you bring entire worlds to life at the Dungeon Cocktail Experience. And as always, thank you to you, dear listener, for taking your seat at the table. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever it is you do, and hey, come join us over on Discord. Until next time, keep playing games, telling stories, and creating worlds worth getting lost in. Stay safe out there, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the Corner of Story and Game.